And good morning, everyone. Happy Friday morning to you, and welcome back to Morning Musings here on Now TV. Boy, I appreciate you being with me. It's a joy to be with you every Friday morning and to share my thoughts on the Word of God and how it applied in the first century, how it applies today. And as I've shared with you, we're still dealing with the topic of the challenge of Christ. The challenge of Christ is very real. And I've shared with you that how over the last couple of years, and in reality for many years, but I encounter a growing number of atheists, a growing number of Jews and Muslims and skeptics overall who are using the claim of Jesus's failed eschatology to destroy the faith of Christians. There's a relatively new book out entitled Broken Promises, written by a man who said he is a former member of the Churches of Christ. And he has written this book to address the fallacies of futurism. He also addresses partial preterism. And then at the end of the book, he addresses the full preterist view, which I espouse. And he does a whole lot of ridicule, to be honest about it. Now, as I'm making this video, all right, Mr. Smith and I have plans to have a formal internet debate in February of 2023. Now, that's a good long ways off, and so we will see if it will actually materialize. So Mr. Smith claims that he has the evidence to destroy Christianity. He has the evidence, he has the proof that Jesus lied, or that he was simply deluded, that he made false promises. We shall see. I believe Mr. Smith's claims can be easily debunked. Now, they cannot be debunked by any futurist, okay? And in reality, they cannot be debunked by the partial preterist. The only answer to Mr. Smith's challenge is full preterism. So, as the time approaches, I will be keeping you informed as to whether or not the debate with Mr. Mark Smith will actually take place. I know you'll be interested in that because it deals directly with the challenge of Christ, which was, do you remember? If I do not do the works which my Father has given me, do not believe me. Those are the words of Jesus in John 10 and verse 37. Thus, Mr. Smith has every right in the world, ladies and gentlemen, has every right in the world to look at Jesus's claim that he was going to come back in the first century and to ask the question, did he or did he not keep his word? Now, Mr. Smith says he has proof that Jesus did not come back. And of course, you know, I assume, that Mr. Smith claims that Jesus claims that he was coming back literally, visibly, bodily as a 5'5" Jewish man at the end of human history. That is what Mr. Smith claims that Jesus taught. I deny that claim. So again, we shall see, number one, if the debate takes place, and we shall see if Mr. Smith is able to adduce any kind of proof for his claims. I've been going through his book already. I'll refrain from any comment at this time. Now, over the last couple of videos, we have been focused on Revelation chapter 1, 1-3. The revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave to him to show to his servants things which must shortly come to pass. You know, a week and a half ago from the time that I'm making this video, there was yet another individual on Facebook. You know, every once in a while, I mean, very, very commonly, someone pops up and says they've got the answer to preterism. And that answer is time words don't mean anything. At hand doesn't mean at hand. Oh, well, it might mean at hand spatially, that is geographically, like my Bible that is right here is at hand. That doesn't mean it's temporally near, which of course is a ridiculous argument, because you know what? Okay, there's my Bible. It's at hand. Temporally at hand. Or God doesn't talk in time like we do, which is another ridiculous argument. And so on it goes in the attempts of individuals to deny time statements. Now, here's the irony of this, ladies and gentlemen. And let's see if I can adjust that just a tad. Here's the irony of this. So many of the individuals, and believe you me, again, I'm not questioning anybody's integrity or their sincerity. Now, there might be a few of them that I do, mind you, that I have encountered, but nonetheless, the huge bulk of individuals who try to deal with the time statements are good, honest individuals who sincerely love the Lord. But they have been misled concerning God's time statements. They have been convinced by false arguments that God doesn't talk in time like we do. God doesn't think in time like we do. Now, let me remind you of something, ladies and gentlemen. The very people who make that argument, they go over to Matthew chapter 24, and they respond, if you can call it a response, they respond to full preterism that appeals to Matthew chapter 24, verse 34, in which Jesus said, "Verily I say unto you, this generation will by no means pass until all of these things are fulfilled." And then they jump down to verse 36, in which Jesus said, "But of that day and hour knows no man but the Father." And so they tell us, okay, it sounds like Jesus was predicting his coming for that generation, but after all, no man knows the day or the hour except the Father. Now, there are a couple of things to glean from this very, very quickly. Number one, Jesus wasn't saying in Matthew chapter 24, verse 34, that he knew the day and the hour. He was saying he knew the generation. And there is a huge difference here, isn't there? You know, my best friend and I here in Ardmore, Oklahoma, not very often, but every once in a while, we really, really like to go to swap meets, automotive swap meets. And we sometimes say, well, when is such and such swap meet? Well, I don't really know. Well, it'll be next year in the spring. So let's go. Okay, let's make our plans to go to that swap meet. We don't know the day. We don't know the hour. And the time we're making our plans, we don't even know the month. But we know it's going to be next year. We know it's going to be in this generation for sure, or else we couldn't go. But again, we know the day. We do not know the day or the hour. We don't even know the month, but we know the generation and we know the generic time. Now ask yourself the question. Was Jesus in Matthew chapter 24 and verse 36 saying he could not know the generation? Clearly not. He didn't say, but of that generation no man knows. No. He says, but of that day and hour no man knows. Now, let me remind you of this, ladies and gentlemen. Go back to last week's video. In last week's video, I shared with you how point number one, Revelation 1, verse 1, the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave to him. Here, God is the Father. He told his Son to tell the churches, these things must shortly come to pass. So here's the Father who knew the day and the hour of Christ's parousia, telling Jesus, go tell the churches, these things must shortly come to pass. Okay, so since the Father knew the day and the hour, then he could legitimately, honestly, objectively tell his son to tell the churches that those things really were about to take place. They really were at hand. They were coming soon. They were coming shortly. After all, God can tell time. Secondly, in Revelation chapter 14, 6 and following, John said, I saw a mighty angel flying through the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach to every kindred, tongue, nation, and tribe. And he said, Babylon is fallen, Babylon is fallen, Babylon is fallen. Fallen is that great city, for the hour, Greek word hora, the same word used in Matthew 24, verse 36, but of that day and hour knows no man. So we have the Father sending Jesus to tell the churches the hour of the judgment of Babylon has come. Not only that, Revelation chapter 14 and verse 15, John said he saw another angel, or he said he saw one like unto the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven, having a sickle in his hand, and an angel came out of heaven saying, thrust in your sickle, for the time, Greek word hora, literally, the hour of the harvest has come, for the earth is ripe unto the harvest. So twice in Revelation chapter 14, the Father, who knew the day and the hour, was instructing the Son to tell the churches the hour of his judgment on Babylon, the hour of the judgment had arrived. Now, ladies and gentlemen, how can anybody legitimately argue, well, God doesn't think or talk in time like we do, and yet God knows the day and the hour, and God, who knew the day and the hour, told the seven churches, the hour has come. There's simply no escaping this. It is nowhere legitimate to say God doesn't talk in time like us. God doesn't think in time like us. He doesn't see time like we do. Oh, but wait, he knows the day and the hour, and he said the hour has come. Do you see what kind of nonsense this is? And I'm trying to be kind here. I'm not trying to be harsh or critical. And again, I'm not accusing anyone of dishonesty. I'm simply pointing out the inconsistency in the futurist arguments in which they say God doesn't view time or talk in time like we do, and yet they say he knows the day and the hour, but when he talked about the day and the hour, that doesn't mean anything. I'm sorry. That's nonsensical. It truly is nonsensical. It doesn't even make good nonsense. Now then, to demonstrate further that time statements must be taken as legitimate, objective statements of either temporal delay or temporal imminence, I want to call your attention to Luke chapter 21. And by the way, in my book, Who Is This Babylon? And in my book, Can God Tell Time? I discuss Luke chapter 21 and verse 8 extensively, quite in depth. And for the rest of this month, and we don't have much time left in this month, I understand that, but take advantage of this. For the rest of the month of June 2022, U.S. orders only, go to my website, donkpreston.com, bibleprophecy.com, or eschatology.org. Go to my bookstore and order the book, Who Is This Babylon? When you order the book, send me a note that says you saw the offer on YouTube or Facebook or on Morning Musings on Now TV, and I will give you free of charge, absolutely free of charge, my book, Can God Tell Time? Now, again, this U.S. orders only. I wish I could do this for overseas or out of the U.S., but I simply cannot do that. So take advantage of that offer. And again, I know there's not much time left, but you know what? If you see this offer on Now TV, even after the end of June, just let me know, and I'll still honor the offer. Now then, in Luke chapter 21, Jesus gave his apostles. Now, by the way, Luke chapter 21 is a direct parallel with Matthew chapter 24, the Olivet Discourse. Jesus predicted the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple, and the apostles asked, "Tell us, when shall these things be? What shall be the sign when these things shall be fulfilled?" Which means, by the way, that when we conflate and compare Matthew 24, verse 3, with Luke chapter 21, 4 to 6, it means that the apostles were asking about one thing: the end of the age, Christ coming, in the destruction of Jerusalem. They were not asking about two radically different things separated by so far 2,000 years. But notice what Jesus says in Luke chapter 21 and verse 8. He said, "Many will come in my name, saying, 'I am he,' and the time has drawn near. Do not believe them." Now, folks, I've got to tell you, the very first time I saw this years and years ago, it literally floored me. You know, I've talked about the Bible sometimes reaches up and it slaps you beside the head, not with a 2x4, but with a 6x10. Passages that you've read over and over and over again, passages that you quoted 1,000,000 times, but it didn't soak into you what you were actually reading. You just didn't comprehend it. But over a period of time, the more knowledge we assimilated, all of a sudden, all of these other details start rushing in. They combine in our brain, in our mind, in our cogitations, and they reach up and they go, "Hello, do you see what Jesus was saying?" And it's been my experience that the great majority of people do not realize what Jesus was saying. They do not realize its impact and its implications against the argument that says God cannot tell time. God does not talk in time, communicate in time like man does. And let me illustrate that. Let me discuss Luke chapter 21 and verse 8 a good bit here. So Jesus said, "Many will come in my name saying, 'I am he,' and they're going to say, 'the time,'" well, the time of what? The end. The time of the end. Because after all, that's what the disciples asked about in Matthew chapter 24 and verse 3, isn't it? "Tell us what should be the sign of your coming and the end of the age." That's what they're asking about. And so Jesus said, "Many will come in my name saying, 'the time has drawn near.'" Now watch what Jesus said. "Do not believe them." Now look, ladies and gentlemen, let's just face it. If Jesus told his apostles not to believe statements that the end had drawn near, then it would be wrong for the apostles to say the end had drawn near before the end had actually drawn near. Let me say that again. You really have to catch the power of this. If it would be wrong for these false teachers to say prematurely, "the end is drawn near," then it would be equally wrong for Jesus' apostles to prematurely say, "the end has drawn near." Oh, but wait. After giving that warning, Notice what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 24, verse 32. Now remember, the apostles asked him for signs of the end of the age. And he gave several signs. And Jesus said, now learn a parable of the fig tree. When the fig tree puts forth its leaves, you know that summer is nigh, even at the door. So likewise you, when you see all of these things come to pass, know that it, well, what's the it? It is Christ coming at the end of the age. So Jesus said, so you, just like when you see the fig tree put forth its leaves, know that summer is nigh, even so you also, when you see these things come to pass, know that it, the end of the age and the parousia, has drawn near. They could not know that the end had drawn near until they saw the signs of the nearness of the end. Okay? Not only could they not know that the end was near before the signs appeared and they witnessed them. So again, not only could they not know that the end was near, they therefore would have been false teachers to declare the end has drawn near before they saw the signs to know the end was near. Did you catch all that? If you didn't catch it, go back and listen to it. That's important. So the point of it is, here's some false teachers who were going to prematurely say the end has drawn near. Jesus said, only when you see the signs can you know the end has drawn near. And you can know it is nigh, even at the door. How amazing is this? You've just simply got to catch this. Premature declarations of the nearness of the end of the age and Christ's coming were false. They were to be rejected. Not only were the claims to be rejected, those who made premature declarations of the nearness of the end were to be rejected as false teachers. Now then, this gets really, really good, and I've got to hurry. Remember, Jesus said, when you see all these things come to pass, then know that it, end of the age, coming of the Lord, is nigh, even at the door. Well, in James chapter 5, James said, the coming of the Lord, the parousia, which is what the apostles asked about in Matthew chapter 24. Tell us what should be the sign of your parousia and the end of the age. Now remember, Jesus said, there are going to be false teachers arise, and they're going to prematurely say the end, i.e. the parousia, has drawn near. Don't believe them, but when you see the signs, know that it, the parousia, has drawn near, and it is nigh, even at the door. So here is James chapter 5, writing near the end of that generation, and James said, the parousia of the Lord has drawn near. Now, wait a minute. You know, according to the skeptics, the scoffers, the deniers, James was wrong. Well, guess what? If he was 2,000 years premature, then yeah, he was a false teacher. But wait, watch this. This is incredible. James not only said the parousia has drawn near, he said the judge is standing right at the door. Now remember, Jesus told his apostles, James was not an apostle, but nonetheless, the apostles told the early church, do not believe premature declarations of the nearness of the end. But when you see the signs, know that it is near, even at the door. And James, one of those who heard the warnings being taught by the apostles, said, the parousia has drawn near, the judge is standing right at the door. Now, if the false teachers that Jesus was warning about were in fact 2,000 years premature, and therefore to be rejected, what does that mean? It means that James, living in the same generation of those false teachers that Jesus warned them about, James is equally a false teacher, because from approximately 33 AD, which Luke is recording about in Luke chapter 21, okay, until the writing of James in the mid to late 50s, perhaps even the early 60s, you have a gap there of 30 to 35 years. Let's just round it off 35 years just for fun, okay? So over a period of 35 years, here are men who came saying, the end is drawing near, and the church could say, false teachers, false teachers. Oh, but here's James writing to the church, and he says the parousia has drawn near, the judge is standing right at the door, and the church, if James was teaching and predicting a literal, visible, bodily coming of Jesus Christ out of heaven as a 5'5" Jewish man, James was just as guilty of being a false teacher as the men that Jesus warned him and the apostles about. If he was 2,000 years premature about the judge standing right at the door, then he was every bit as much a false teacher as the false teachers that Jesus warned about. The very inspiration of Scripture hangs in the balance here, ladies and gentlemen. I'm out of time. I can't discuss any more today, but I promise you, next week, we'll continue this important subject. I'll see you then.